Welcome to BitBoy Crypto, the people's channel, home of the BitSquad, the largest and greatest crypto community in all of the interwebs. My name is DC. This is Around the Blockchain. We come to you Monday through Friday at 5:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking about your favorite topics with your favorite guests. And this is the best panel we've ever had in the history of the show. I know I say that every time, but this time I actually mean it. On the top right, we have the same haircut as two of the guests. We have Crypto Keeper. Make sure you check out Debate Crypto. There's some really, really good debates on there. BJ's on there. I'm on there. Who knows who's on there? Crypto Busy on the bottom right. Our friend from across the pond. We're holding solid without having the same haircut as Gareth Soloway on the bottom left. I got to go high and tight, but, I need more follicles to get there. And then on that top left, we have filling in for Ben, Crypto JChains. Coming live from his office in the basement. So I appreciate you filling in on the last second there. All right, but today we're going to be talking about Chamath Palihapitiya's forecast, Bitcoin in Honduras. We have a second country, and then the first bank in the Metaverse. Maybe Meta Money's in there. Wait a minute, they stole your name. All right, but before we get into that, we're going to be looking at these markets real quick, and it's a little flat. We got some things, looks like XRP is having a pretty good day, but we have Bitcoin, down about 1%. We have Ethereum still pushing around that $3,000 range. Now, Gareth, I saw you looking at some charts. You're quiet. You're pulling up. I saw some lines. I saw some candles. I saw some trends. I saw some bottoms. What is going on with the Bitcoin market?
That's the big question, right? And really not a whole lot in terms of price action. We've just been in this sideways channel for so long now, really going back to January of 2022 here. So the key here is which is the next move, right? And I have a time factor. I mentioned it last week, but now we're coming into it. March 22nd through the 26th or so. Watch that, because if I'm right, you're going to see a bigger move coming out of that area. I'm getting that from a cycle that occurred over here, which was exactly 2 months from this low pivot to when you started this bigger move up. It was 2 months, and we're coming right up as of tomorrow to 2 months since this low. So just something to watch. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's these are the things that as a trader you start paying attention to. You look for these similarities in the chart. So again, for me, overall, I think the downside move is the likely occurrence here over the next couple of weeks. I think we break down through this channel and probably head down quite a bit lower.
Okay, real quick question, just kind of for my own curiosity here. Looks like, would you count that as a Bollinger Band? It's kind of trading sideways in a tight channel. Now, is it true the longer we go within the band, the higher or the lower the explosion will be outside of the band? Is there any validity to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm impressed, DZ. I'm impressed. So that's exactly right. Basically, think about it like a spring tightening, right? So the more sideways action you get, the bigger the move in whichever direction it tends to go, or it will end up breaking. And basically, you have two lines to track it, right? We have a definitive line up here and one down here. So whichever way it ends up breaking, look for a major move in that direction. If we broke this one to the upside, it wouldn't shock me to see a move possibly back to the all-time highs. But the same thing on the other side, because it's been kind of getting tighter and tighter, and that spring has been being wound, the downside could be very substantial. You could be talking into the mid 20 or low 20,000 range.
Woo, all right. Well, that spring is getting tight. Let's just hope it goes up. Let's fight gravity. Yeah. Let's send it to the sky. A good way to do that is to hit that like button right now. It helps us get out into this YouTube algorithm. More people learn about crypto, the more people are going to buy some Bitcoin. And you know what? I'm even wearing the shirt in solidarity with Honduras today. But we're going to be talking about, let's talk about a little Chamath's forecast. Of course, we're talking about the billionaire investor from the All In podcast, noted tech investor. You see him on MSNBC, CNBC, Fox Business News. You'll see him reference in crypto articles quite often. And he is saying the global market outlook is looking good for the near term. He is saying basically the bottom is in. And one of the metrics he was using is basically, we have capitulated as retail traders. So retail has capitulated. They were net buyers first couple months. Now they've turned a corner. Now they're starting to sell. And he's saying you can essentially trade by doing the opposite of retail, fading retail. And he's saying a lot of things are priced in. Worst case scenarios with Russia are priced in. Worst case scenarios with the Fed changing rates are priced in. So all the downside risk is priced in. He's saying, maybe we're going to see some, upward movement here. Now, JChains Do you think that retail has capitulated, and have we basically wrung retail dry, or is retail going to have another leg maybe with these tax returns?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, when you talk about tax returns, I mean, we're coming into April next month in just a few short days here. And I have been saying, man, for a while, I actually talked about this with Ben today on the morning live stream. I was running the board for it. I've been saying for a while now, April's going to be a big month for Bitcoin. It's going to be a big month for crypto. I firmly believe that. I think, a lot of people, we saw towards the tail end of last year, things kind of start to dry up as far as retail goes. I think people are ready to get back into it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are expecting returns and refunds this year on their taxes. So what's the best thing to do with it? I mean, if you know about Bitcoin, if you know about crypto, buy some, do that, put that money to good use. Don't just don't just spend it on something that, is not going to get you anything, but more financial freedom. So I think that things are definitely headed in the right direction, especially for the next month. And then, yeah, we're going to see a lot more retail coming in. It has to. I mean, that's the only way for this to work. Again, me personally, I do a lot of stuff in the metaverse space, so I talk about Bitcoin very infrequently. It's more about the play to earn games. It's the metaverse thing. So I think a lot of the money is going to be coming into there. If you're looking at, some of these metaverse plays, some of these other coins, there's a lot more action. I mean, they're not down right now. I mean, we're looking at double digits all the way down the line. So I think that retail is just maybe finding a different entry place and entry point in different sectors. And that's my opinion. I think that's where really we're going to see a lot of growth in the next couple months for sure.
No, you make good sense there. And I mean, we just saw it with ApeCoin. I mean, it's dropped for free, and retail money was a lot of the people buying this, and fully diluted market cap was $12 billion. People are still buying, sent it all the way to 15, 16. Now, Crypto Busy, one of Chamath's predictions, he did say, on our end of the pond, inflation should be tamed by the back half of this year, saying, we could go up to 2.5% on the interest rates here. But what is it looking like in Europe? Like we kind of live in this vacuum over here, hearing about Fed rates and hearing about Gary Gensler and what the SEC is doing. But what about over there in England? What about, in the, just European countries in general? Are we seeing the same thing with inflation going out of control?
Yeah, it's funny actually. In the UK, it seems like all we talk about is the US and their inflation problems as well. So I think it is definitely a bigger thing in the US at the moment, especially. And I'm sure we'll get onto with Honduras and stuff like that. We see these other countries adopting Bitcoin to try and avoid this inflation problem. And yeah, I think it's definitely been created into a big deal as a US problem right now. And I don't know if that's just because the UK wants to make it seem like we don't have as many problems when we definitely do.
I don't want to cut you off. A lot of times what we do over here is we just, we look at how they've changed the way how they measure it. You go by what they measured it by with the metrics in the 70s and the 80s, and we're pushing 10% inflation. So there's a lot of pushback against our officials on, whether the information they give us is correct. Is that a similar situation over there, or do you take what they say at face value?
No, I think it's a similar situation. I think it's always the case is, you take what you can, but you kind of take everything with a pinch of salt. They obviously have an agenda, so you never can be too sure. But it's the same thing where, yeah, I think interest rates are slowly starting to rise over here to combat stuff like that as well. Just as that does seem to be the general world trend. And also, I completely agree with Chamath, though, with his predictions and stuff, because I think looking at what retail is doing is the absolute best way to know what not to do. I mean, this is one of the main things we teach on our channel is we use the smart money concepts when we come to trading. And that's essentially looking at how institutions would trade and how institutional money moves around. And essentially, you actually utilize retail in the way that you just avoid doing what they do. If you see an area which is a super obvious support and resistance zone, you do not trade that area, because the likelihood is if everyone else can see it, it's not going to work, because retail loses money 95% of the time, especially in Forex trading, for example, where I came from. 95% of people lose money. So you can, again, make money pretty much from doing the opposite of what everyone else does. So yeah, I completely agree with what you said.
It is definitely a loser's game until you educate yourself, use some good marketing indicators or market indicators, and maybe check out even some of the people we have on the panel today. Now, Crypt Keeper, he was saying we are priced in with these geopolitical events. The downside risk is already priced in. Do you agree with that assessment, or, are we one bad explosion or one bad headline from everything taking, a pretty sharp turn downwards?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do agree with it right now, but I also agree with the sentiment that if we were to get a World War III type news, we are going to see a massive dump, right? But I think that it's going to be for a short period of time. We had Gareth on the other night debate Crypto, debating technicals versus fundamentals, and I'm really interested to see which way this goes, because it sounds to me, because of how technical Gareth is, that he believes that things are going down on a, from a technical standpoint, but the fundamentals look like, yeah, I do agree with what he's saying. If we would not have heard about the Fed rate hike already, if we would not have had some sort of an idea that there's a possibility that Russia and Ukraine were going to come to some sort of an agreement, if none of that had already happened, then I guess what I'm getting at is that has happened and we didn't see a massive move from it. If anything, we've actually seen a little bit of a move upward. And so I think that, yeah, we're exhausted and I don't see any direction but up. Now, short-term price movements, that's always, up in the air. Who knows? But as always, long-term price appreciation. Yeah, we're headed up. I agree with it. The market is worn out with all the news.
Yeah, and you try saying price appreciation 3 times fast, chat. All right, now Chamath, real quick, I just a little background on him. We have this picture of him looking like a 006. Here he is, but he got his basically came to prominence with AOL. You see it here, and the NBA Golden State Warriors. So he's part owner of those. So I mean, he's been known. He jumped ship out of AOL when the timing was right. He's a billionaire. He's obviously smart with his capital. Just real quick, Gareth. How do you normally, when you hear Chamath, because he's always on these, he's always on the talking head shows, does he usually, have a good batting average, or is this something we should, as Crypto Busy says, take with a pinch of salt, which I hope isn't a slang for when you're in the discotheque, by the way?
Yeah, so historically, I mean, number one, his story is awesome. It's an amazing story about how he came up from poverty. I was just looking it up a little while ago, to become very, very wealthy. But historically, in the near term, you have to go back to the meme stocks, the GameStops, the AMCs. He tended to be someone who was really pumping and goading the longs to kind of drive it up and saying keep buying when these stocks were ridiculous levels. So we know that since then those stocks have crashed far, far lower, and a lot of people have lost money. So I'm not a huge believer in what he's been saying yet. Time will obviously tell. We'll be able to look back in a month or so and see if we did see a bottom here. But again, I'm not buying it at this point, since historically he hasn't been super accurate.
Okay, fair assessment there. All right, well, let's talk a little Bitcoin for Honduras. This is huge news. It looks like our second country is finally officially adopting it as legal tender. Some official announcements are going to be maybe breaking today, but seems like the news has leaked. It's President Castro. I'm going to try to guess to say his first name, Xiomara Castro. He came out, El Salvador, this is quote, El Salvador shouldn't be the only country escaping dollar hegemony here, so essentially a monopoly. And even Max Kaiser has been over there, for months, I believe, at this point. And he tweeted out a flag on the 18th. So he kind of dropped a hint that something is going to be happening big with that Honduran flag tweet. Of course, El Salvador made the big announcement last year at Bitcoin Miami. I think it became official around the fall. And interestingly enough, they did a survey. What's the next country you see adopting? And Honduras was all the way down to number 40. And then they ended up being the second one. So pretty interesting there. Now, let's see, JChains here. Honduras isn't the biggest country. You know what I mean? It doesn't have a gigantic GDP. But how many countries have to switch over to Bitcoin before the U.S. sees it as a competitive or a competitor on par with, the digital yuan? I mean, do they have to equal China's GDP? Do we need like 10 smaller countries? And then maybe, the panic starts to set into the Fed. At what number of countries are they like looking around each other like, okay, we need to do something?
Don't get mad at me, anyone, when I say this. I don't think that Bitcoin should be the digital currency that the world uses. I think that there are a lot of other options. There's a lot of other options that are faster, better. The technology's better. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. And I'm sorry. I got friends that are. I love you guys. But I think that there's other blockchains, other protocols that would be better suited to be currencies. This is digital gold. Trash. It's a store of value. Ooh, I got hit with that trash. It's digital gold. It's it's a store of value. It's not a currency. I don't think that it should be. That's my personal opinion. I think there are plenty of other options that it would take to move this forward in a more mainstream mass adoption movement, right? And I'm not going to drop any of the other projects and protocols or whatever, blockchains, but I think that with the digital yuan coming and other countries taking notice, it's going to be something that can compete against that, not Bitcoin. Bitcoin has already made a lot of people rich. The countries of the world, especially the United States, are not going to adopt that because they can't get rich off of it. They can't buy enough of it to make it happen. I think that's where again, I'm just a guy with some shoes in the background, and that's it.
No. You're half of Meta money. So, money's in the title. You must know what you're talking about here. Now, Crypto Busy, we're seeing this adoption in Latin America. There's also whispers of, Pacific Island countries. Fiji or Easter Islands, they're going to be using it. But what's the temperature of the European Union right now? Are there any, maybe countries on the fringe with the EU or maybe outside of the EU, but, sharing borders that you might see adopting it anytime soon? Or is Europe going to be, one of the last places to adopt it?
I think it's pretty much the same as the US, really. I think that we're just going to wait for everyone else to do it first, and then we'll be like, oh, yeah, we thought the whole time. And they're just going to let everyone else kind of be the experimenters and see what happens there. I don't know. I can't see, especially the UK, going forward anytime soon and saying they're suddenly going to adopt Bitcoin as some kind of currency. But that being said, crazier things have happened probably. Actually, I don't know if they have, but I do think, the US and the UK will probably be like the last two. I really cannot see that happening because they seem very like pride driven as well as countries. And not to assume that on the US, but the UK definitely is. And I definitely think that they'll be very strong against it until everyone in the world has adopted it, and then it will become, oh, well, we might as well at this point. But I do think it's really good to see Honduras take that step. Now we've got two at least. It's got to start somewhere. And I think more than necessarily as a trendsetter, it's just good to see those countries taking care of themselves as well, against inflation and all of that. They've got a lot to worry about. So doing something like that is really beneficial for them. And it's great to see that kind of movement and people getting behind that.
All right. Well, I want to hear a tale from the crypto keeper here. Like Busy said, there's a lot of movement behind this. It's starting to move quickly. First they laugh at you, then they fight you, as they say. But I could easily see, a few more countries adopting it this year. However, our regulatory scrutiny and, our clarity on our actual rules seems to be a little slow. Do you think that our regulation can keep up with the pace of adoption?
I think our regulation is trying to slow down the pace of adoption. I ultimately believe that the United States is looking around and saying, we are in trouble. And the problem that I have with it is that when we started printing all of this money out of control, you cannot say that we did not know simple economics, that this was going to cause a problem. And it causes a problem not just in the United States. The US dollar is the world reserve currency, okay? And so when the world reserve currency all of a sudden goes out of control as it relates to inflation, that the rest of the world has to look and say, we have a problem. And so I think what the rest of the world is trying to do is probably play the political game where they're not just shunning the dollar, but they're opening themselves up for another opportunity. And that other opportunity is Bitcoin as it stands right now. I actually somewhat agree with JChains, and I know I jokingly said sinner when he was talking about the Bitcoin not being that the currency. I believe that it could be the reserve currency in its own right, but I don't think that because of what you're asking about, DZ, I don't think that it will be because of the regulations. They're ultimately trying to slow that adoption down and trying to position themselves to be able to get a digital dollar together, because the facts are the dollar as it sits right now is headed to zero. I've had people tell me that I'm absolutely crazy. Where are you from? What planet do you live on? But the facts are right in front of us. And if you believe that our inflation is actually only 7.9%, then my question to you, my friend, would be, what planet are you from? Because the gas that I'm buying, the other things from the grocery store, just housing market, anything you can look at, lumber. I mean, it's out of freaking control, and the rest of the world has to look around and notice that. And so, yeah, they're looking for other options. And right now, Bitcoin is one of those great options to where they don't have to commit to a certain country. They're committing to something decentralized as an option.
Yeah, the rates are ridiculous. It's like, I don't know how they get it. They must base like 80% of the value off televisions or something like, TVs are getting cheaper. You're okay. Calm down.
Yeah.
Now, Gareth, is it enough for a country? You're a dictator. We're dictator Soloway here. We all hail you. We all, you're on all the statues. You're on the television. You're on every poster in the elementary schools. You have, rising inflation. Maybe you have an issue with corruption within your country. Is switching to Bitcoin, now everything's on a ledger. Now everything's a little more trackable. Now you don't have to worry about officials just printing money out of thin air. Is that enough to, maybe grab your country by the reins and, maybe steer it in the right direction? Or is that just, putting a Band-Aid on a much larger issue?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's probably a Band-Aid at this point. Maybe longer term it is, but I think when you have the corruption and the crime and the drug problems and everything that a lot of these countries, these two countries that are adopting it, have, again, it's not going to solve the underlying issues at this stage. It's not to say that in the future, when they get better, it's not going to be a major staple. But I'd also like to point out that these are amongst the poorer countries where, let's be honest, the poorest people that are probably affected by inflation the most. They're not the ones that have the internet and are able to go buy any Bitcoin anyways. So it's probably the elitists, if you will, in the government that are trying to protect their money by putting it in Bitcoin and then printing a ton of other money to pay off other situations. So again, going back to your question about whether or not the US will ever adopt it, maybe a long time from now, but keep in mind that the government wants some sort of control on the amount of a currency so that they can, think about monetary policy, the ability to raise rates and suck money out of the system or to print, and it kills that. So the government or any major government is going to really be against adopting it in a major way until it becomes inevitable, until it's forced on them, essentially.
Yeah, okay. Good point there. All right, well, let's talk a little metaverse banking. We're going to be banking in the future now. This, right up MetaMoney's, wheelhouse right there. But, we saw it earlier. We saw HSBC. We saw JP Morgan. They bought some Sandbox, I believe. They obviously want to have some sort of presence in the metaverse when it comes to banking. But there's a new player in the field, Bank DeFi. They want to be the first truly decentralized bank in the metaverse. They want to do, multiple chains. They want to have their own token. They want to, help you out with healthcare and NFT and entertainment and all the other things, that you see in all the projects. But I think it's interesting, they're also largely marketing to a global user base here. Now, I don't know the details on whether or not they're going to be, FDIC insured if they operate in the States, or what it would be for the other countries if they're going to be operating within their protocols. But it's going to be a lot of risk, essentially, but I do think that eventually we will get there. Now, Keeper, what do you think the biggest risk is when, you got your VPN on, they don't know where you're from, you're protected, wherever you're, posting from is a legal entity, or it's, no red flags there. How would you feel about putting your funds in a metaverse bank, an online bank? Would you treat it differently than a regular, online bank? Because it involves crypto? Does adding crypto make it more shady, more reputable? Like, how does that factor into the equation for you?
I think the question or the answer is going to be different for how I would look at it versus somebody that's not already in the crypto space. If somebody's not already in the crypto space at this point, at this juncture in time, they're probably going to look at that and say, "Oh, heck no, I am not going to be a part of that. My funds are just going to disappear. Poof, they're gone," whatever the case may be. For myself, I don't really see much of a difference between having, ETH on my MetaMask, right? What is just as an example, like, what's the difference? I am taking capital and putting it onto, the internet, if you will, right? It's already sitting there. The other thing that I would argue is if they are vetted properly and have some VC backing, because ultimately they can say it's decentralized, but it takes a lot of money to even do the little YouTube videos that they did and the graphics that they were putting together. Like, it takes money to do all of this. So there is some sort of a central entity there. But my thing would be, what's the difference also between me putting money in JP Morgan Chase right now? If they're able to build up a big enough reputable platform and they're able to guarantee your money, what's the difference? If I sent you money, JChains, right now from JP Morgan Chase and use Zelle, it's digitally. It's not like the truck's backing up from my bank into your town and dropping it at your bank. It's a digital transaction on a digital ledger. So at the end of the day, if we're able to trust where the funds are actually going and crypto's involved, I think the big play here or the big part, the best thing is that it is validating and verifying the fact that we are headed in a global adoption situation. And man, it's not slowing down, it's speeding up, and the metaverse stuff is just beginning. So we need banking. There are going to be a lot of funds that need to be moved around as it relates to the metaverse. I'm all for it. Let's get to it. Let's get after it.
All right. Now, JChains, will this online metaverse bank be able to, compete with their real world counterparts? Are they going to be able to offer the same services? Are you going to be able to, get a checking account, maybe get a car loan, maybe cashier's checks, maybe I get a digital toaster for signing up for their savings. And if they will be able to, what kind of timeline do you see on this? Is this something that they'll never be able to do, or is this something that, they're like 10 years away from, maybe, or even 5 years?
Well, I appreciate you guys writing at least something metaverse into the show. As you know, Meta Money is our show, and we are all things metaverse. I honestly would like to echo pretty much everything that Crypto Keeper says. I mean, a lot of that goes into the whole decision behind everything. I mean, banking in the metaverse, I kind of think it's really more of like a gimmick right now. It's like Chevron saying, "Oh, we're in the metaverse now." It's like, what? I'm not buying a gallon of gas in the metaverse. But what I love about it is that it's DeFi. Right? DeFi. All these things that people want. If you want a micro loan, if you want a crypto loan, great, do it. You don't need a bank to do that. If I were to get money from a DeFi lender, I don't need to tell them what it's about. It's if I want to get a car with it, if I want to buy more Bitcoin, if I want to buy more other crypto, that's what I'll do with it. So I think that they can absolutely provide some of the same services, but it's really up to you what you want to do with it. Now, me in particular, my personal opinion is I would never use a DeFi bank or a bank like that, because that's the whole point of crypto, is for me to self-custody my own money. I don't want someone else, not your keys, not your coins. I don't want to lose control of that. And I don't think anybody in this panel would feel the same way. Now, I know that you can use your wealth to create more wealth by borrowing money. So if that's the end goal here, let's do that. I'm all for that. And if they want to give me, if I can get, 10 million on, my Bitcoin as a loan or whatever crypto that I have, and then go on to build an empire from that, wonderful. I might do that. But I think at this point, a lot of this, because the metaverse is just so brand new and a lot of it's to be determined, it's all just buzzwords and gimmicks as far as these banks coming into the space, because we don't really want them in the space. I think they kind of ruined the legacy financial system. So stay away. Just all right, stay away.
Now, Gareth, I think JChains brought up, a pretty good use case, which would be collateralized loans. Maybe put up some sort of crypto equity, or maybe even, NFT if it's valuable enough. And then, maybe you see a little DeFi with it. Maybe you see, a little bit of cross bridge transactions. But how do you feel that the U.S. regulators are going to look at this? Say they do try to abide by the rules. Say they do try to jump through the hoops. Do you see Goldman, Gary, and the feds, ever allowing this to, maybe take place or compete against a JP Morgan in Sandbox or, HSBC? Are they going to make a level playing field, or do you think that something like this might be trying to do too much?
No, I do think eventually, right? I think the regulators at one point, they're going to have to first focus on the volatility in this space, right? So, if you're going to put up, your crypto, your Bitcoin for a loan for something else, well, what's the degree of risk? Is Bitcoin going to drop 85% to another winter low, for instance? And then that could be an issue. So I think that's the initial problem that I see with it. But I do think over time, Bitcoin will have less and less volatility as you get more and more adoption. And that's where I do think at certain points, the regulators will come around. They will say, okay, this is fine, because now we've seen Bitcoin stay within a 10% range, let's say, for a year period. Now, right now, obviously, we're moving 10% in a day sometimes, so it's not feasible at this point. But I do think that more and more people in the government are coming around to this. I think more and more people understand the need for kind of a digital gold, if you will. And I do think it's coming. Yeah, just going to take time.
All right. Now, Crypto Busy, will traditional banks be able to, coexist side by side with these two entities, maybe doing different things? Or is there a future where you see, you can walk to your local branch and there's a little, Bitcoin department, or they can, walk you through crypto, security, or, maybe collateralized loans with Bitcoin, like Gareth said? Will they have to move towards what they're doing online, or will what they're doing online have to move towards more the traditional sense?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, because it's always kind of been us versus them when it comes to banks and crypto. It's always been pitted against each other. No one really thinks of the two harmonizing together. And I think this is the first kind of sense where we've actually seen that, where banks are starting to step into our world a little bit and play by our rules, which is kind of nice to see for once. I find it quite funny, actually, because, JP Morgan, for example, I remember them slating crypto in the past, them saying they would never get involved, it's a scam, whatever. And then here we are, 3-4 years later, and they're literally actively a part of the whole metaverse. So I think that's just funny in itself. And that already, it shows how much to really trust them. But as that aside, I think it is interesting that they're a player. I think it would be good to see maybe just how it works out. I think it's a nice experiment in that sense, to see them side by side alongside actual, DeFi money lenders and stuff like that. But I agree with what JChains said about, gimmicks, and it really is just buzzwords at this point. I think they're doing it for the sake of it, just to try and get a bit more publicity, a bit more people thinking, oh, these guys are cool, right? We must invest with them, right? When in reality, they could go to many other places and get a better deal that doesn't involve the traditional method. So I think it's an interesting one. I think what we'll most likely see, to answer your question again as well, is we might actually see these traditional branches having those crypto sections in store as well. But I think it'll be a thing where they have both. You can go online or you can go in store. I don't really foresee a future where we don't have any banks whatsoever, out in the open. But, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But that's just how I see it.
All right. Well, that'll be an interesting merge of those two different, branches. No pun intended. But that is all we got time for. It looks like Crypto Keeper won. I know you said you're going to play the guitar solo next time you win, but I think that's for the next time. You didn't have it ready. You're going to do a Dire Straits guitar solo, I believe. But
yeah,
Crypto
that's
Keeper,
exactly what I said.
You ended up winning.
To heaven.
Go ahead and leave us with some parting thoughts, please, sir.
Crypto fam, I appreciate you guys having me here as always. Make sure you follow everybody on the panel. I know this is going to hurt JChains, but I just want to throw out there, we've got an NFT project coming out. Okay, jump into the Discord. It's Danger Close Alpha. The reality is, right, the metaverse, your metaverse avatar is not going to save your life if the world heads down into the crapper, okay? But we've got some real world use case that just might be interesting for that exact case. So check us out, Danger Close Alpha.
All right, check that out. Make sure you're checking out all the channels. The links are in the description. And that is all we got time for. Frankie Candles is live. Make sure you check out NFT Alpha and Meta Money as always. And I think you'll see some funny DZ action on the next Hit Network tonight. But until then, DZ out.